My first memory is about when I was 5 years old, and I remember being able to see into other dimensions, for what I now understand. I would see things that were devas, disembodied souls, angels, deities. I thought they were normal. I was 5 years old. And after a while I shut it off. Until I was about 18 years old. I had what most people would call a very successful childhood. I was a good kid. I was an overachiever. But despite all these things, something was missing. I wasn't sure what it was. I didn't know about God. And I knew that things were different. When I saw my professors, my lecturers sit up in the front of the hall to speak in front of the students, well, I could see their aura around them. And as they spoke, well, their aura changed. When they moved their hand, their aura moved with them. And so I knew things were different. I could sometimes sense things before even people knew it. A Native American woman came to me sometime while I was going through all this questioning period, and she told me that God is everywhere and God is everything. And now, it just so happened that a few months later, after this sort of opening, if you will, I went to India, and there I heard about Swami, and then that was it. My life was changed forever. It turns out that my grandfather is a very highly accomplished yogi, highly advanced. Swami is actually called him a Jivan Mukta, that is somebody who's liberated while alive. Tell me what it's like to be God again. I'm beginning to forget. This is what happens to little children. This is what happened to me. All of us have this ability at birth. We're born with it. It's our birthright. Yet we turn it off after a while. We let it atrophy. We let it wear away. And like any muscle that we don't use, we lose it after some time. And so the only reason why we don't tune into God is maybe we're not doing it. We don't know how, and so forth. And I'll give you some examples why. Now, why should we tune into God? What's the point of spending all this time listening to me for the next hour, talking about the inner voice? And Swami said, all the people who've ever been born in all the yugas are present here at this time. Think about the impact of that statement. Everyone who has ever been born is here right now on earth. At some point or other, during the present avatar, everyone is here. 6.5 billion of us. We're all here now. Why? Why is that? This is the golden age. This is the Sai Yuga. Never in all of Earth's very long history, much longer than what our history books tell us, has it ever happened this way. Never have we risen to a golden age in such a manner, when the full avatar is here, and everyone has a chance to attain the highest possible level. Everyone, regardless of their background or qualifications.
An instructive talk about one of the most sought-after spiritual practices of all seekers of God, of all seekers of Holy Man Sri Satya Sai Baba. This is a comprehensive guide to how to hear Sai Baba through the inner voice, with cardiologist Dr. Srikanth Sola, formerly of the Cleveland Clinic in the United States, and now of Sai Baba's Hospital in Bangalore, India. Welcome to Souljourns. This video was recorded in 2006.
My name is Srikanth Sola.
That works.
So, Sairam, everyone. Sairam. Now, we've got what till Jodi we're going to 11:30 tonight, is that right? I'm just kidding. Okay. All right. This is an informal talk. I call these talks, they're more discussions or sharing. And so there's going to be a couple of meditations during the session. So what I'd like you to do is, if you have any cell phones, pagers, Blackberries, Strawberries, go ahead and turn them off now. Feel free to ask any questions during the talk. Just raise your hand, share any experiences, and just let me know your thoughts, especially after we do all of the meditations that are going to happen during the next hour or so. During the meditations, I'm going to ask you not to get up and move around, but if you need to take a break anytime, just feel free to do so at any other time. Okay. Usually, when I give these talks, I'm given a topic by Swami through the inner voice, about usually a day or a day before the talk begins. And so about an hour ago, I was told what to talk, and so that's what we'll speak about today. We're going to talk about the inner voice. How to hear Swami through the inner voice, that is, what the inner voice is, how we can hear it, what are the traps or the faults that get in the way of hearing the inner voice, and how we can tune into Swami's voice to guide us in everything that we do. Now, Before I begin, let me just give a little bit of description about myself. Not that this small body sitting before you is important, but that every instrument, no matter how pure, has certain characteristics. A scalpel does the work of a scalpel, a pickups does the work of a pickups, forceps does the work of forceps, and so forth. And so let me just describe the particular characteristics for this life, and then you'll have some understanding of where I'm talking from. I was born in India to a very traditional family, and came here to this country when I was pretty young, about 5 or 6 years old, and had all my education here. Coming from India, where I went to a very orthodox upbringing, to the United States and New Jersey of all places, it was very difficult, and especially because I started off in a Catholic school, whereas coming from a traditional Hindu background to a brand new country, brand new school, brand new religion that was very strong in the school that I went to was very confusing for a first grader. And so my early years were a lot like the story of the boy named Johnny. And some of you might have heard about him. There's a young boy named Johnny, and one day he went to Sunday school, and his teacher asked the class, well, where does God live? And some of the students said, well, God lives in heaven, and he lives in the sky, and so forth. And little boy Johnny said, well, God lives in the bathroom of our house. And the teacher said, in the bathroom of your house, Johnny, what do you mean? And Johnny said, well, every morning when my older sister's getting ready for school, my father pounds on the door and says, my God, are you still in there? So that's what growing up was like, in a sense, for me, but all the more so because at a very young age, my first memory is about when I was 5 years old. And I remember being able to see into other dimensions, for what I now understand. I would see things that were devas, disembodied souls, angels, deities. I thought they were normal. I was 5 years old. They were part of my upbringing and what I was raised as, and so to me they were normal. And so if I communicated with them, well, that was just fine, and what they said made sense, and it turned out to be true. But no one else around me could see these things or hear these things, and as when you're 5 years old, you're told that these things are just your imagination, right? And that's so. And after a while, I shut it off. Until I was about 18 years old. I had what most people would call a very successful childhood. I was a good kid. I was an overachiever, valedictorian in high school, went to Stanford University, which at that time was like the #1 college in the country, and got all these scholarships. And at the age of 18, I bicycled across the country for charity. I had appearances on CNN. I was leader of several very nationally prominent student groups. I was invited to speak at numerous conferences on community service. Even though I hadn't heard about Sai Baba and Seva, it was already a big part of my life. But despite all these things, something was missing. I wasn't sure what it was. I didn't know about God. And I knew that things were different. When I saw my professors, my lecturers sit up in the front of the hall to speak in front of the students, well, I could see their aura around them. And as they spoke, well, their aura changed. When they moved their hand, their aura moved with them. And so I knew things were different. I could sometimes sense things before even people knew it. And eventually what happened is, about the sophomore year that I was in college, I went to a summer camp where I was working. I was an art instructor there, and I taught art classes for adults. And it was right in the Sierra Nevada mountains near Lake Tahoe. Beautiful place, lots of mountains, lots of forest, wilderness areas all around. And on my days off, I would go hiking in the woods by myself usually. And it was there that I came to understand that God God is. I would go out onto the mountains and have these tremendous experiences of joy, of bliss, of peace. Wild animals would come and play around me. Birds would come and sit next to me. Chipmunks and animals I'd never even seen before. And to this day, I don't know what they are, but would come and play around my feet. Huge swarms of butterflies would just surround me. And the most confusing thing was that the devas, the spirits, the nature spirits that are present all around us in the forests, in the trees, in the rocks, the springs, the mountains, would begin to communicate with me. So for a while, I thought I was really losing it. Here I was at 19, very big, very prestigious college. I was doing very, very well. And I was hearing things, seeing things, strange things were happening to me. And then, that was a Swami coming in. He came in late. A Native American woman came to me sometime while I was going through all this questioning period, and she told me that God is everywhere, and God is everything, and that He's in nature. And it was very easy for me to see God through nature. Very easy. Even to this day, I can go out for a walk. 2 minutes later, I'm in that state of Godness. It's very simple. And for all of you, it's that simple too, if we just try. And we're going to go through some of those techniques to give you that. So maybe not 2 minutes, but 2.5 minutes, you'll be able to get there. It's very simple. Now, it just so happened that a few months later, after this sort of opening, if you will, I went to India, and there I heard about Swami, and then that was it. My life was changed forever. It turns out that my grandfather is a very highly accomplished yogi. Many people see him as their guru. In India, we have a guru disciple tradition, and many people see him as their guru. He's very highly advanced. Swamis actually call him a jivan mukta, that is somebody who's liberated while alive. His level of attainment is so high that many times when he would go to meet other Swamijis, yogis, and so forth, they would come and bow before him in their recognition of his attainment, his level of spiritual stature. And so it was from someone like him that I was able to learn and to progress and to move very, very fast. In fact, he told me, he said, Srikanth, you know, I've had many, many disciples, but in the last 3 months, that is during my summer holidays that I spent in India with him during my college years, you've progressed faster than anyone I've ever had. But again, that was because I was with him day and night, and I had 24-hour access to him and his teachings, and more importantly, the boost that he gave to me. So whatever good you get or whatever benefit you get from today's talk is due solely to my grandfather and his greatness. Now, eventually I went on to medical school, and it was a very intense time. That was where I learned to listen to Swami through the inner voice. And we're going to talk a lot about the inner voice during the next period. It was a very quiet voice at first, and it took me quite a while to get accustomed to it. But once I did, I learned to figure out what was the inner voice and what was my own sort of mental thinking. And then I learned to rely and to trust the inner voice, that is God's voice within me, so that I knew when it was him, and I knew that I could rely on him. And it was great. You know, I did very well in school, but in medical school, people are very, very smart. This was at the time where medical school admissions were at the peak. And so we had students from all over the country who were literally just brilliant. And so with Swami's help, I would take my exams. And back then we had all multiple choice exams. And the question would be something, you know, whatever about whatever topic. And it would be choices A through E or A through G or whatever. And I'd say, Swami, it looks like B or maybe E, which one is it? And Swami would say, put E. I said, are you sure, Swami? And Swami said, have you ever known me not to be sure? So I put E, and then I would go home later after the exam, and I'd check my textbooks, and sure enough, Swami was right. And so I did this, and I ended up graduating at the top of my class.
You mean he did?
Swami did. Well, there's a story about that. There was one class where I ended up getting 100 on every single exam, one after the other. And finally, there was one point where there was a question I wasn't quite sure. Swami told me the answer. I said, no, it's got to be B, and it wasn't B. And so I missed that one question. But the rest was perfect. When it came time to take the national board exams in medical school to graduate, you have to take something called the board exams. These are our certification exams that all medical students and eventually all physicians at every level have to take to show that they have met some minimal level of qualification. And so we have to take those, and there are different phases of those. They're very big and very important exams. And so, you know, I studied very hard, and, you know, it's not that I just sat back and studied. I mean, I worked 15, 16, 17, 18 hours a day studying during this time, and it was Swami who gave me the energy to continue with that intensity. But I took the exam, and of course Swami was there the whole time. Sometimes I would know the answer even before I'd finished reading the question, and I'd put it down. The guidance was so great. And several months later, when we got our scores back, it turned out that not only did I get the highest score ever in the history of my medical school, I got one of the highest scores ever in the entire history of the exam. A couple of days after I got the exam scores back, Swami came to me in a dream, and he says, you see, that was entirely my doing. There's no way you could have gotten those kind of scores on your own. And so it's been like that ever since. Swami told me where to go from medical school to residency, which is the higher level of training that physicians go through. From residency, he led me to a cardiology fellowship in Atlanta, Georgia at Emory University. And then during my 4th and final year of fellowship, Swami said, be chief fellow. So I had the honor and opportunity of being the chief among the fellowship class at Emory, which is actually the largest fellowship program in the country. And an opportunity to really mentor and train many of my junior fellows. He then brought me here to the Cleveland Clinic, and it's interesting, even before I got the call to come, would you please come and interview for the Cleveland Clinic, Swami said, this is where you're going to go, this is what they're going to offer you, this is how much they're going to pay you, and they're going to pay you way more than you're worth, by the way. and this is what you're going to be doing. And so everything that he said, of course, came out correct. And so that's how I live my life, is by tuning into Swami and following his guidance. It's a lot like a scalpel in the hands of a surgeon. So I want you to interact with me here. If a surgeon has a scalpel, what are the qualities that the surgeon would like in that scalpel? Just call them out.
Steadiness.
Sharp, want it to be steady. Precise. Sterile, clean, right? Exactly. So keep these qualities in mind. And we're going to come back to these as we go through our talk. Now let's talk then about the inner voice. You've seen what it does for me. Last night, in our culture, and particularly our subculture within India, we have certain days that are very prosperous or auspicious. And so ceremoniously we buy auspicious things. So my in-laws were with me and they say, why don't you buy some gold? So, gold is really expensive, but they said, okay, buy a small amount. So we bought some. And I look back at my records. I remember I just started practice, and the salary of a fellow in residency before that is minimal. I calculated to $3.15 per hour one time during my internship year. But the modest savings that I applied, Swami said, put your money here. And so I did. And this was back in 2001, 2002, when the stock market went to the dot-com peak and then the boom. Then he says, by March, I want you to take your money out and put it here. So I did that. And sure enough, just as it peaked, I had taken my money out and then was safe. A couple of years later, he said, buy gold. So I bought gold when it was not even half, literally, of its current price. And so I was looking back last night and said, my goodness, Swami, you are the best financial advisor a person could actually ask for. So not only have you used Swami for work, for finances, Swami told me whom I should get married to, when I should get married, what to name our child, so forth and so on. So what is this that I use? What is this ability that I use? It's, and I'm not going to give you the numbers for the next lottery win, by the way. But what is this inner voice? This inner voice is what Swami calls the inner view. Swami says, don't yearn for the interview. He says, yearn instead for the inner view. And that inner view is that inner dialogue with God that all of us has. And so whether I use the name Swami, Jesus, Rama, Krishna, Buddha, Allah, it doesn't matter. Those are all just terms that denote a certain energy. God, him, her, that's not relevant for this particular discussion. But that inner dialogue with our own divinity is what is the inner view, where we know that we are God and we live our lives with guidance from God. Everyone has this ability to dialogue with God. You don't have to be a rocket yogi to do these kind of things. Everyone can do this. It's just that we've turned it off. And let me tell you a story. There was a Sai family and young parents, and they had two young children. I think one was about 4 and the other was 2. And one day the older child, there are 2 boys, the older son says, Mom and Dad, can I talk to the younger son? Can I talk to him alone for a while? Parents thought this was a rather strange request to come from a young boy, but they said okay, but they had an intercom system in their house, so they turned it on and they went to the other room and listened into their conversation while the boys were talking. And after the boys were alone, the older boy goes to the younger boy and says, tell me what it's like to be God again. I'm beginning to forget. This is what happens to little children. This is what happened to me. All of us have this ability at birth. We're born with it. It's our birthright. Yet we turn it off after a while. We let it atrophy. We let it wear away. And like any muscle that we don't use, we lose it after some time. And so the only reason why we don't tune into God is maybe we're not doing it. We don't know how, and so forth. And I'll give you some examples why. Now, why should we tune into God? What's the point of spending all this time listening to me for the next hour, talking about the inner voice? I had a conversation with a devotee once, and he was talking with Swami. And he said, he was complaining to Swami. He was complaining about how cheap people were. He said, Swami, back in the Treta Yuga, during Rama's time, people gave 50% of their wealth to charity. Then in the Dwapara Yuga, during Krishna's time, people gave 25% of their wealth to charity. But Swami, in the Kali Yuga, this present age, for someone to give 10% of their wealth, even 1%, is so hard. He was complaining how cheap, how chintzy people had become. And Swami said, all the people who've ever been born in all the yugas are present here at this time. Think about the impact of that statement. Everyone who has ever been born is here right now on earth. At some point or other, during the present avatar, everyone is here. 6.5 billion of us. We're all here now. Why? Why is that? This is the golden age. This is the Sai Yuga. Never in all of Earth's very long history, much longer than what our history books tell us, has it ever happened this way. Never have we risen to a golden age in such a manner when the full avatar is here and everyone has a chance to attain the highest possible level. Everyone, regardless of their background or qualifications. Think about that. The first Vice Chancellor of Swami's College, Professor Gokak, very renowned professor in literature in his field, very well known, very studious and accomplished. Swami treated him with the greatest amount of respect. Swami said one day that he was the great sage Kapila, come back from a previous lifetime. At another point, Swami says there are 6 present disciples of Christ living in the ashram at this time. This is back in the mid-80s. Every single one of us is here at this time. Another example. There was once a devotee, this was back in the 60s, and she was just crazy about all these yogis and rishis and everything. And so she went with Swami once to the Himalayas, back when Swami went to Badrinath and the Himalayas and all these places. And so as they're up there, she would go, Swami, 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 show me some yogis. Nothing would happen. She said, where are all the yogis? Where are the Swamijis? And Swami joked with her. She said, they've all turned themselves into snow, so people like you don't come and bother them. So they went to one temple called Badrinath in northern India. And everyone came in for darshan and they saw the deity installed there. And this lady had come out, she'd gone to the back of the temple to look around the temple grounds. And as she was looking around, Swami appeared by her side. Swami had walked up quietly and was with her and said, come with me. So they walked down a path between some hills and valleys. And after some time, they stopped and there was a small path that went down to an old hut. And Swami said, go inside there and look, see what you can find. So this lady, she was middle-aged, very cautiously walked up to the hut, not sure what she would see. And she just very carefully opened the door, and she saw this old Rishi sitting there in Padmasana. His hands were still in the typical posture, the hand posture that we use. And his fingernails had grown so long that he had actually grown into the earth, into the ground. He had been there for so long. His mouth was partly open, he had 2 buck teeth, and he had a long beard. And it was evident from all the dust and the lack of movement in there that he hadn't stirred for many, many ages. She was so terrified because in the Indian stories, in the Puranas, if you disturb a rishi while he's in Samadhi, you can get cursed and be turned into a stone or some rock or slug or something. So she quickly ran back to Swami, and Swami said to her, that was Vasishta, the great Rishi, Mahabrahma Rishi, the one who was created at the time that this universe was created. Such a great Rishi. He was Rama's guru to Sri Rama and had been present many, many ages before then. Such beings are present now, and some of you are probably those same great beings. All of us are those same great yogis, those great giants of past that have come again at this time for Swami's work. During the time of Rama, you were probably the monkeys that were hurling boulders over the walls into Lanka. During the time of Krishna, you might have been the gopis who were playing with Krishna when he was a small boy. And you're here now for Swami's work. But because of Maya, because of the influence of Kali Yuga, we've forgotten how to tune into God within. We think that Swami is somewhere way off in Puttaparthi and forget that we can connect with him at any time. So if we can do that, why can't we do it? What's happened? Well, I talked a little about that. We said we forget, but what is keeping us from tuning into the inner voice? And there's a number of things. First of all, it's like any relationship. You know, if you and I want to have a relationship, it takes time. We have to give time to getting to know each other, to be able to talk to each other, to know our listening styles, our speaking styles. We have to know, I have to get to know my own fears and wants and the things that you want from me. It takes time to do that. And so like any relationship, we have to put the time and effort to develop it. And we don't do that because we don't know how, but we're going to cover that today. Sometimes we don't do it because we're too tired. Happens to all of us. We suffer from what I call WMDs, the weapons of mass distraction. And you know what they are: internet, cell phone, our work, our worries, television, newspapers. Exactly. We all have them, and they're all different for each of us. Sometimes we don't tune in because we misunderstand what Swami is saying. And I'll tell you a story. There was a monk, a Buddhist monk, who lived up in the Himalayas in Nepal, and his job was to translate all the sacred scriptures. And so one day he was downstairs in the cellar, in the storage area where they kept all the great old textbooks, and the monks upstairs heard a loud cry, a big shout, and they all ran downstairs to see what would happen. They thought maybe he'd been hurt, something had fallen on him. And they got down there, and the monk was sitting there in front of this textbook, and they all came by and said, "What happened? What happened?" And the monk looked at the textbook and he said, "It says celebrate, not celibate." And so sometimes we misunderstand what Swami is saying to us. I remember when I first started listening to Swami, if Swami told me something I didn't want to do, I would say, "Nah, it's just my imagination." And so we do that all the time. Whether it's conscious or subconsciously, we do that. And so we're going to learn about some of those tricks, some of those traps that get in the way. Okay, so we learned about what the inner voice is. We learned about why it's important to listen to it. And we learned about some of the things that keep us from listening to the inner voice. Let's spend the rest of the time actually getting to know the inner voice. What it sounds like, what it feels like, what it senses like. Let me give you an example. Let's say you're called into an interview with Swami. And so when you walk into that interview room, how are you going to perceive Swami? You're going to use all of your senses, right? You're going to look at Swami, so you're going to use your eyes. You're going to hear Swami, so you're going to use your ears. You will hopefully feel Swami, so you'll use your sense of touch, and you may even smell Swami from the vibhuti or that wonderful jasmine fragrance that he has. And then you'll use your mind, your knowing, to sense what Swami is saying to you. And so we have inner senses that we can use to perceive God as well. Those, the seeing, the vision, all those things are outer senses. We also have the corresponding inner senses that also allow us to hear, feel, sense what Swami is saying. Now, I do a full inner voice workshop that's 3 hours long, so I'm not going to go over each and every sense, but let me just briefly describe them, and then we're going to focus on the first sense, which is inner hearing. Sometimes it's called clairaudience in some circles, but this inner hearing, that is hearing the voice of God within you. There are other senses. Sometimes they're called inner seeing or clairvoyance. Sometimes they're called inner knowing or clear cognizance. And sometimes it's an inner feeling or clear sentience. Clear feeling or clear sentience is like when you get a feeling that something is going to happen. We all have that, hunches in a sense. Clear cognizance, that inner knowing, is those intuitions that we get. I better do this soon, or this is going to happen. Just a hunch, feeling that we know that something is going to happen. Clear seeing is when we can see things, whether it's an angel standing in front of us, or we get a vision of something that's happening to someone many, many miles away. And clairaudience or inner hearing is the ability to hear the voice of God directly within. And so let's just focus on clear hearing or that inner hearing, clairaudience for now. Now, a couple of years ago, many years ago, Swami gave me an analogy. And I've been using this analogy for almost every talk that I give because it still holds, and it's very, very true. Swami said to me through the inner voice, he says, when you're listening to God, when you're listening to my voice, it's as if you're a radio. He says, your body is like a radio. The mind is the dial that we use to tune in to Swami's voice. We can tune it into the outer world, or we can tune it in to Swami. Station 108 on your FM dial, WSAI. So we tune in to Swami, or we tune in to other things, our worries, our problems, our attachments, our fears. He says, your devotion to me, your bhakti, is the antenna that you use to pick up my signal. The straightness of your spine is the actual physical antenna. So when we sit up straight, we create a current in our back that allows the natural energy. There's two channels, the Sushumna, and there's a channel called the Sushumna with Ida and Bingle channels that go through our body, subtle nerve channels that are like basically circuits that allow us to pick up his signal much more clearly. He says, keep your back straight when you want to tune into me. If our devotion is the antenna, then what is it that gets in the way of us hearing him? And Swami said that is our attachments, our fears, our desires, is the static that not only keeps us from hearing what Swami is telling us, but sometimes actually distorts Swami's message, so we hear something that's totally different. And we've seen that many, many times in history with the Crusades, with what's happening in Iraq, with so many places where our desires, our attachments, our fears distort something, or distort the inner voice into something totally different. And a new lesson that Swami gave me recently is that our fears short-circuit the entire system. Think about that. Our fears will short-circuit our entire system so we can no longer hear what Swami is saying. So let's practice this. Now, before we can really listen to what Swami's voice sounds like, we kind of need to know what it sounds like, right? Makes sense? Kind of need to know what to listen to. So let me describe what his voice, her voice, whatever way you want to say, sounds like initially. It's a very still voice, a very small voice. Swami says that it's only in the depths of silence that the voice of God can be heard. And so one of the requirements for listening to Swami is to be able to quieten, to silence the inner chatter, the noise that we all make. It often speaks very softly, at least initially, unless it really wants to get your attention, and then it's very powerful, very strong. And as you get more accustomed to hear it, it'll become loud and clear. It's like a distant voice. You know, when you're far away on your phone, the message is not so clear, but when you get closer and closer to the transmitter, the signal is much clearer. In the same way, as you first start to tune in your radio, the voice will not be as strong, but as you get better and better, you'll hear it loud and clear, like a shortwave radio. You can pick it up anywhere. Swami's voice always speaks very uplifting, which is different from the ego voice. The ego voice puts other people down, it puts you down, it's negative, it's inconsistent from one time to another. Swami's voice is always uplifting. It never puts anyone else down, never puts you down, although it may correct you. It won't punish you. Swami does not punish, he corrects. But it will always be positive, and it will always be consistent, guiding you in the same way. Do more meditation, clear up your diet, watch less TV, turn off the computer, love more, be still. The same message will be consistent from time to time. Swami's voice leaves you uplifted. You shouldn't feel sad or depressed or afraid when you hear his messages. The ego voice, or even other voices, should you be unlucky enough to tune into some other being, is not like that. It can leave you afraid. It can leave you worried. It can leave you concerned about something bad that's going to happen, about some disaster, whether it's avian flu or the stock market crashing or something. It's negative. It's fear-filling, whereas Swami's voice always brings calm, brings peace. And so these are the characteristics that you can use to help distinguish your voice from Swami's voice, the divine voice from any other voice. Now, when you tune into Swami's voice, it's really important that you prepare yourself. And so let's spend a couple of minutes just going through the preparation before we do that. This is the turning the radio on, okay? And so this is what I call relaxation, reception. We're all pretty good at this, although sometimes we tend to be a little bit too uptight. So we're going to just practice relaxing ourselves. So here we're going to have a meditation exercise. Okay, so what I want everyone to do is sit up comfortable, but sit up straight. Keep both feet on the floor if you can, or if you're sitting down comfortably, if you want to sit cross-legged, that's fine. And what I want you to do is start with 3 very deep breaths. Go ahead and rest your eyes closed softly. And breathe in as deep as you can. And now take your right hand and put it on your abdomen. And as you breathe in, inhale with your abdomen so that your hand moves out with each exhalation. And moves in with each inhalation. Now, some of you, your hands might move out farther than others, but that's a different story. But feel your hand move out with the exhalation. Relax back in, move out with inhalation, and move back in with exhalation, excuse me. If your shoulders are moving up when you Inhale, that's incorrect. Your shoulders should be steady and relaxed. Your chest should be relaxed. Your breathing is with your abdomen, like a set of bellows, the old style bellows we use in a fireplace. And now as you inhale, feel that you're drawing Swami's energy into you. It can be whatever color you like. But feel it, sense it, see it go through your body, hear it go through your body. Engage all your senses as this energy, his energy, fills you completely. And exhale all your negativities, all your worries, your concerns, your impurities. Let them just simply be floated away by his energy. Feel your body lighten. There's no more tensions. Your muscles are relaxed. And now we're going to take it a step further. Ask Swami to breathe through you so that each inhalation of his becomes your inhalation, and each exhalation becomes your exhalation. His breath has become your breath, and Swami is breathing through you. Feel the bliss of his breath as it moves through your body. Keep the breath very deep. And then slowly bring yourself back to the room. Relax your hand. And come back. Could you feel a difference? Okay. Calmness, peaceful. Let's try something else. Let's chant Om together. We're going to do it 9 times. But let me go through how Swami says we should chant Om. Swami says that Om has 4 syllables. A, U, M, and then silence. The A, or the Akara, stands for spiritual success. The U, or the Ukara, stands for worldly success. And the M, or the Makara, sounds for merging with God. And the silence that follows these 3 syllables is Brahman, is God itself. A, U, M, silence. Now, there's a circuit to be made when we chant Om. And by chanting Om, I'm talking about when we do Omkara. You know, chanting it 9 times, 21 times, or so forth. Swami says that the sound of Om should begin at about the level of the navel in the back. And as you chant the it comes up towards the top of the head. And as it crests over the head, it becomes It doesn't have to be so dramatic, I'm exaggerating it, but Om. And where the A and the M meet is at the level of the navel, completing a circuit. And then pause for silence afterwards. A, U, M, pause, silence. Swami says the A and the M should be of equal duration. So if you say for 1 second, you pause for half a second, or you Say U for half a second or so, and then M for another second, and then silence, as long as you're comfortable. When you're in the silence phase, don't force your breath. Don't be holding your breath meanwhile your lungs are bursting. Don't do that. When you need to start again, then start again. Swami once asked a student, he says, get up and talk about the 21 Omkars. This was in a small group session in Puttaparthi. And so the student says that when we chant Omkar 21 times, it has a certain meaning. It says the first 5 times we chant it are for the 5 external senses. The second 5 times are for the 5 internal senses. The third set of 5 is for the 5 sheaths or koshas within the body. The fourth set of 5 is for the 5 elements that make up all of creation. And then the last Om, the 21st Om, was for the Atma or soul. Swami then went on to add an additional explanation for why we should chant Omkar 21 times each day. He says when you do this in the morning, it creates what we call in Hindu terminology the Sudarshana Chakra, the discus of God, the divine weapon that protects his devotees. He says that is created over your head in a very esoteric way, and that protects you during the day. So this Omkar chanting is more than just a sadhana, it's a shield, an armor that you can take with you and protect you during the day. We're going to do this 9 times. Okay, let me just chant it one time to show you what I mean. And then we're going to count, do it 9 times. You can count on your fingers if you need to. At the end of the 9th Om, let there just be silence for some time. Now, here's what I want you to do though. It's not just a simple Om. It's not just chanting. Because if it were just simply making noise, then the tape recorder that we're listening to afterwards will have moksha. It's not just doing it. It's the actual intent. And so let me chant Om one time for you. And then we're going to talk about the intent with which we chant. So the intent is that we merge with God. That silence, the pause that comes after M, is for us to merge with God. So we're all going to do this now, but I want you very strongly to set in your hearts the intent to merge with Swami. At the end of the 9th Om, there'll be silence. At that point, I want you to ask Swami, what is it that I could do to move closer to you? That's all you have to ask him. If you want a different question, that's fine. But let it be an open question as such. And then just be receptive for the answer. Don't strain. Just be receptive for whatever answer you get. But the intent is that we're merging ourselves fully within him. If there's any disturbance that comes during this Omkar chanting, let it come and go. See that also as part of his divinity. See that also as part of Swami. If you hear your neighbor coughing or moving, that is also Swami. That is also God. So hear everything, see everything, feel everything as God. Merge your entire awareness into God. I'm going to do this 9 times. Silence. Ask the question, what can I do, Swami, to move closer to you? Let's begin. slowly relax your body. Gently move your arms and hands. Then come back. And again, let's go back to what we felt before, that all of us can do this. This is just a matter of us tuning in to Him so that we can listen. It's a matter of using these muscles that we haven't used for years, literally, in some cases. But one important point. If you think that you cannot listen to His voice, you will not. Your intention is everything. Your intention will create your reality. If you say, I can't do this, well, you can't do it. You won't do it. And so you have to have the desire to listen to His voice. Now, one thing I want to clarify about desire is that your intention should be, I want to hear you. You should pray, Swami, help me open up these channels. Help me open up this ability to tune into you, to the inner voice. And so let this be part of your prayers tonight as you leave here. Swami, let me be able to tune into your inner voice so that I hear you loudly, clearly each and every time. And He'll help you to do that. But let me give you an example or an analogy of how we should listen. Sometimes some of my beginning students think that trying to listen to His voice means that we should really try hard to listen to it, but it's not like that. And let me give you an analogy of a satellite dish. So all of you have seen these satellite dishes, these small dishes that sit outside people's houses. So this is what I call the dish network method of hearing. So a satellite dish, what does it do? Nothing. It just simply stands there. It allows the signals from the satellite to come to it. It does not strain to grab those signals. It doesn't reach out to get the signals. It simply allows the signal that is always coming to it to simply come. It simply is receptive. And so in this dish network method of attuning yourself to Swami, allow His message to come to you. Don't strain, because when you're straining, you're going back into desire, into attachment, into fear, and that's going to garble the message or prevent you from hearing His words completely. So that dish network method of perception, allow His message to come to you. So far in talking about how to listen to the inner voice, we've talked about the analogy of the radio. We've talked about how our body is like the radio, which means that the radio needs to be kept in pretty good shape, huh? Right? If you've got a busted radio, it's not going to work no matter how good the antenna or the dial is. So keep your body in shape. As I go around to different Sai centers, I'm amazed, and this is the cardiologist in me coming out, so forgive me. I'm amazed at how stagnant our energies are. It's a skill that I use, that I've learned, whatever. But as I look into people's energetic bodies, I see stagnation sometimes. Not many of you here, but some. And so exercise is a way to clear those channels, to get things moving, to get all the dust and cobwebs off the radio so you can start to use it again. We've talked about the mind and how we're going to tune into Swami, which means that when you are trying to tune into Him, if you have worries, if you have concerns, leave them aside for some time. They'll still be there. They'll always be there. You can come back to them, but the thing is that if you tune into Swami first, think about how much greater, with much greater perception, much clarity, you'll be able to deal with those issues afterwards. So let the problems and issues and concerns stay there. You can deal with them afterwards, but you'll be able to deal with them a whole lot better after you tune into His voice. We talked about our desires, our fears, our attachments, the static and the fears, which are the short circuit. And we talked about our devotion as the antenna and keeping our spine straight, because the antenna needs to be straight. Now, we need to talk about what powers the radio. It's like the current that keeps the radio going, and that is our breath. We already touched on this a little bit when we did the abdominal breathing exercises, and there's some more subtle, refined variations of this that I can teach you if you're interested. But when we're tuning into Swami, it's very important that we breathe with our abdomen, slow, deep breathing. Swami's talked a lot about breathing. I have a close friend of mine. His name is Sridhar Krishnamurthy. He's a very well-known Sarodh player. He used to play for Swami sometimes on his birthdays. And when Sridhar was about 4 or 5 years old, Swami came to his house in Madras, what is now Chennai. And Swami sat next to him on the sofa and said, Sridhar, I'm going to teach you pranayama. These are breathing exercises I want you to learn. You're not going to see any benefits for 50 years, but they're going to help you. And so Sridhar was 4 or 5 years old. He said, okay. And so Swami taught him these very simple exercises, and he's been continuing them Now he's a highly advanced yogi, very close to Swami on the inner plane. So Sridhar went, when he was about 6, a guru came from the Himalayas to his house. The guru was known to their family. And the guru looked at Sridhar's hands and he says he's meant to be a sarod player. Now this guru was what we call a nada yogi, that is someone who uses sound for healing. And so he took Sridhar at the age of 6 to the Himalayas, where Sridhar studied for the next 25 years, living in the caves of the Himalayas. Let me just give you an example of their lifestyle. So when they were learning to play, they had a cave where they had different pictures from the Puranas, the Indian stories, different paintings on the inside of the cave, or the walls of the cave. And so one student would be inside the cave, and the guru and another student would be outside. And the student inside the cave would have to pick one picture and describe that picture through music. And that's how they learned to play with emotion, with bhava, feeling. And so this is the kind of education that Sridhar got. Now one day Sridhar was with his guru. He was about 13, 14 years old. And his guru said, get ready, somebody important is coming today. So they cleaned up. I mean, they didn't have anything to clean up. It was really rocks and a couple of bags of flour. But they got everything ready, and they were all set, and a young man came through to their camp. And Sridhar's guru touched this young man's feet. This young man touched Sridhar's guru's feet. They had lunch together, which back then was 1 chapati per day. And afterwards, they had some talk on sadhana and spiritual matters, and then the young man left. That young man was Babaji, the great master. So these masters who live in the Himalayas use the breath as their channel to communicate with God. That's why the reason I'm telling you these stories, I want to impress on you how important the breath is. There's a place in the Himalayas, won't describe the name, but in that place it's about 14,000 feet elevation. Very cold. I mean, 14,000 feet is pretty high up. And so these yogis live there year-round, winter, summer, and so forth, and they keep their bodies warm through this pranayama, through breathing. They've learned to regulate their energies through the breath. They learn to keep themselves warm through the breath. They learn to cool themselves off through the breath. They learn to survive in the minimum oxygen at that level through the breath. And Swami has talked about them to certain individuals about their yogic practice. This is how important the breath is. Now, there's a story. People in the Himalayas are so advanced that many of them live on breathing. So, in fact, they actually started a restaurant to cater to these people. And they don't serve any food there, but it has a wonderful atmosphere. So, being curious, I went there one day just to check it out. And as I was walking in, there were these 3 yogis, sadhus, walking out. They had clothespins on their nose. They were fasting. So this is how important the breath is. The breath is the current that powers your radio. When the breath turns off, the radio loses its power. And so one of the things that I see beginners do is that they go back to that shallow breathing, especially when they're worried or concerned. We all do that, right? That's what we do when we get afraid, when we're nervous or anxious. We begin shallow breathing. And that deep breathing, that abdominal breathing, is what will keep your radio powered. There are some advanced techniques we can do. We're not going to do them because of time, but I'm just going to describe them to you. In the abdominal breathing exercises that we went over earlier, you can imagine, feel, intend that energy, divine energy, comes in through your crown chakra, enters your body, and then exits through the root chakra and goes into the earth. This is similar to the tree meditation that Isaac Tigert talked about a number of years ago. And then with each inhalation again, after you do this for say 5 times, breathing in energy from the top, sending it down, you breathe in energy from your root chakra at the base of your spine, breathe it in through your body and exhale it out through your crown chakra. And then as you progress and as you become comfortable, adept at this, then with each inhalation you bring in energy through both chakras, the crown and the root chakra, with each inhalation. And then with exhalation, you exhale it out so that everyone around you benefits from that divine energy. When you do this, you'll see that it's an instant pick-me-up. I do this when I'm tired, for example. If I feel that I'm fatigued or whatever, I do this and it picks me up right away. This is just divine energy. This is free energy. This is source energy. hopefully we'll soon figure out how to use this to power our cars and get around gas. But this is divine energy. This is how the yogis live. And this is how you can bring your body up to a much higher level. Now, I want to focus on the breath because it's so important. And I want to teach you the Soham meditation as Swami teaches it. For those of you who've been to the meditation workshop I gave a couple of weeks ago, or months ago now, we talked about this before, but it's always worth repeating because it is so very, very important. Swami says that Soham means I am that, I am He, I am God. And he says that our breath repeats this mantra, Soham, every single time we breathe. We don't hear it because we've got all this other noise going on, but this is the sound that it makes. And if you're very quiet, you'll hear it. Now, Swami says there's a way to chant Soham. He says, as you inhale so. So your body goes so, and then there's a pause. And then you exhale, hum. So you're inhaling so, pause, hum. I am that. I am God. Now Swami says that the duration of the inhalation, the pause or retention, and the exhalation should all be the same. So if you inhale so for 1 second, you pause for 1 second, and then you exhale hum for that same amount of time. So, pause, hum. Now, we're going to practice this in a moment. Remember that our intention is everything. One of the things that I've learned as I give these talks and workshops is that many of us have a tendency to keep these things in our head. These are exercises that we do to come closer to Swami. But what happens then is just simply a mental exercise. And that will eventually get you nowhere. It's not the mental exercise that we need, it's the heart-to-heart opening that's required. And so what I intend for you through these exercises is for you to open yourself up to the Swami within you, to the inner Guru, so you can have the inner dialogue. And so when we practice these exercises, don't make it just a mental exercise. Okay, so, pause, hum. That's not the point. So you're merging into God, pause, that silence of God, hum, the exhalation, the breath of God moving through your body. Feel it, sense it moving through you, make it a part of your body. As you progress, as you become adept at this, eventually you will start taking in divine energy with every breath, combining what we just talked about with the abdominal breathing exercises and so hum. So now you say so, bringing in energy through the root chakra, the crown chakra, pausing and feeling that divinity in that silence, and then exhaling hum, so that you exhale and encompass everything around you. You become everything around you. Everything is in you and you are within everything. And so let us practice this. Don't make it a mental exercise. Make it a heart-to-heart opening so that you become fully open and fully aware of God. Let yourself merge into Swami through the practice of this. Now, one very important thing. Before you do any of these exercises, I want you just to relax your body and start with 3 regular, deep breaths. And then let's go into Soham. Practice at your own rate, and we'll do this for a few minutes, merging into Him. 3 deep breaths. And now, ask Swami any question you'd like. Let it come from your heart, whatever comes to mind, and just be silent and receive the answer. As you go through these exercises, you'll feel surges of energy through your body. The way my grandfather described it actually is the same way that Swami described it. He says that each of us is like a light bulb. Some of us are 40-watt bulbs, some are 60, 100, some are 1,000 watts. And what happens is, as we do these practices, we start to move things around. Channels, nadis, flows of prana or chi that have never moved through certain places start to get moving again. And it create these certain funny sensations that are physical sensations, even prana headaches sometimes, pleasant sensations at times. But as you continue to grow, you'll be accustomed to these, and you'll become 100, 200, 300, 1,000 watts glowing brightly with this light. So you'll feel these energies move through you. It's a sign that you're growing. If you were to say, take my energy, for example, it would probably be too much for many of you because it's too strong. So in the same way, if I take my grandfather's energy, his energy is so strong that when he starts to meditate, for example, you can feel it like a light switch in the house go on, and the entire energy within the home is elevated. His body is so light at that time that it actually elevates off the ground and it comes off. So that is the energy that you're feeling go through. So we've talked about relaxing the body, we've talked about the radio. Remember that analogy every time you ask. Let me talk for a little bit about how to ask, because this is important. And so, although we just now asked a question, I want you to really focus on how we should be asking the questions. What kind of questions to ask? If you ask Swami, hey Swami, can I quit my job and move to Alaska? Well, the answer is yes, you can, but that doesn't mean that's what you should be doing. If you say, Swami, I don't like my job, can I just quit? I really want to leave. Well, the answer could be yes, you can quit. But if you ask Swami, Swami, what can I do about my work that will be for the highest good of all involved? Then you might get an answer that says, first, heal your relationships with your coworkers, forgive your boss, spend some time getting your resume or CV together, and then begin applying for a job under my guidance, and the right job will open up for you at the right time. See the total 180-degree difference in the two answers based on how you ask. So the answers, the questions rather, should be how type questions, what type questions, should type questions, never can questions. They should not be leading questions. Swami, I should really have that extra cookie, shouldn't I? Not those kind of questions. Let them be open questions that allow him to give you a fuller answer. Remember, Swami always knows what's best for us, even though we somehow think that we know. Sometimes we pray for other individuals, Swami, please heal that person, even though it may not be in their karmic contract to be healed at that time. And so we may get a better result. For Swami, let this illness, for example, or whatever, come to the highest good for all involved. And so when you ask your questions, you should be focusing on the highest good of everyone involved, not just yourself, everyone involved. Let your questions be open-ended, and let Swami provide the lead for the question. Now, we talked briefly about how to distinguish between Swami's voice and the ego voice or mind voice or even other beings' voices. Remember that when you ask without desire, ask without attachment to the results. If Swami asks you to do something, whether it's one way or the other, be completely open and willing to accept whatever answer you get. Don't be attached to that. If Swami says, I want you to do X and you really want to do Y, don't keep asking until you get the answer that you want. Be open until you are sure that you will be completely ready to receive whatever answer he gives you, and then ask. So ask without attachment, without desire, and without fear. Be silent and take the time to go inwards, to silence yourself so that you can hear his voice. As you get experienced, you won't need to do this anymore. You'll be able to ask on the fly. You know, Swami's now training me to be able to go through this very quickly. I'm a cardiologist at a very busy institution. We have a lot of patients and a lot of very, very sick individuals, and my work as a cardiologist is often very intense. And so a typical day, this just happened a little while ago, I had to catch a flight out of town I had to leave the hospital at 4 o'clock to get to my flight. At 2:30, I get a call that you're needed right here because there's an emergency. Oh, so-and-so wants this report right away from you. You've got this patient that you need to talk to, and they came all the way from out of state, 500 miles away to see you. Can you see him before you leave? Your secretary wants you to sign these forms before you leave, and then my wife is calling just to see how I'm doing. And so this is Swami's training to get me to listen to him. If I just give in and get exasperated with all the things that are happening, I go back into stress, into strain, into fear, into worry, and then everything short circuits and it becomes a big struggle. When I keep my focus on Swami and allow myself to flow from one place to another according to his guidance, everything goes right on time without any worry, without any concern. So when you ask, let there be no worries, no attachments, no fears, no desires to the results. Be completely open. Ask open-ended questions so you can get complete answers, and ask questions that will provide for the highest good of everyone involved. Now, despite all this, sometimes we still get the wrong answer. And as you all leave here today, I want you to try to mull in your mind the things that you've learned and practice with small things. Please do not ask Swami, hey Swami, can I put all my money in gold stocks tomorrow? And so don't ask those kind of things. Ask small things. Swami, where should I park? What kind of clothes should I wear? Which path or which route should I take to work? And so forth. Ask those kind of smaller questions until you build up confidence in your answers, and then go for the bigger questions after time. Despite that, we still get the wrong answers sometime, and there are several reasons for this, and let me just describe those. First of all, well, the obvious ones, we asked with the setting of desire, with attachment and so forth. That is incorrect. Again, be open-minded, be completely open to his answers. Sometimes we ask when we're tired. And again, if you're tired, you can see how difficult it would be to do these exercises. You can see how difficult it would be to listen to what he's saying. Sometimes we don't hear correctly because we're not quiet enough. If I'm talking to you and you're talking to me at the same time, how can you hear what I'm saying to you? If your tongue is clanging up and down in your mouth, how can you hear the divine voice within? So you have to develop that silence. It's not a mental silence that I'm after, it's the heart silence. Don't make this inner voice a mental process. It's something you do with your entire being as you merge into him. And sometimes we don't hear clearly because we just misunderstand. So let me give you an example. There's a 80-year-old patient. He comes to see his family doctor, and his doctor he examines him and makes some recommendations. And doctor sends him on his way. A couple of weeks later, the doctor's in a country club, and who does he see but this patient? His name is Mr. Smith. And who does he see around Mr. Smith but this gorgeous 20-year-old blonde-haired something hanging all over him in this country club lobby? The doctor can't believe his eyes, so he waits till his lady friend has gone off to the powder room, and he goes up to his patient, Mr. Smith, and says, Mr. Smith, what on earth do you think you're doing? And the man says, well, doc, I'm just following your orders. The doctor says, what orders were that? And the man says, well, you said for me to be careful and to get myself a hot mama. Doctor says, Mr. Smith, that's not what I said. He says, what'd you say, doc? He said, I told you to be careful, you're getting yourself a heart murmur.
Everybody wanted to hear.
And so sometimes we hear exactly what we want to hear. We hear what we want to hear. Swami tells us to do something that is correct, that we don't want to do. We say, oh, that's chin. We hear what we want to hear. So be very careful about that. Okay. I think we've got a couple of minutes for questions.
Or it's auto-suggestion. How do you discern between my answer to my question about which path should I take to work and Baba's genuine answer to me?
Go back to your radio. If you want to tune in the radio properly, you don't just turn it on and listen to any old thing that comes out, right? You have to make sure it's plugged in, make sure the antenna is straight, make sure it's turned on properly, you've got it powered with your breath, make sure you tune it into the actual station you want to listen to with your mind, and then be willing to listen to what comes out of it. Make sure you've positioned it so that there's no static, which means make sure there's no fear, no attachment, no desires. And eventually, as you practice this, you'll be able to distinguish between your mental ego chatter stuff and Swami's divine voice, which comes clear. It's so clear, it's so beautiful when you listen to it. Now, some of you have heard it today, some of you haven't. That's okay. Remember, keep the intent that you will hear it. Pray to Swami that you will hear it, and ask him for help so that you can hear his voice. Other questions?
Sounds like the voice might come as an audible sound, or the vision of a word or a thought. Could be any of those things?
All of those things. Again, that goes back to the inner senses that I talked about, the inner seeing, knowing, hearing, feeling. It can be any of those things. For constraint of time, I didn't go into the details of all those and how they differ. But the inner voice is often a voice. It may be Swami's voice. It may be a hunch, a knowing, a feeling, just something that you feel in your gut. It may even be a smell of vibhuti that many of us have it sometimes. It can be any of those things. Question?
I know a few of us, just touching upon what you said, that all of the souls that were ever alive in the Swamis are alive now. Does that, I wondered why there's so few of us that have been guided to Swami. Does that kind of indicate anything about our past?
You know, everyone is so individual that it depends. Let me tell you a story. Mother Teresa was once asked when she was alive what she thought of Sai Baba. And she said, oh, he does very good work. And then Swami was asked what he thought of Mother Teresa. And he said, she's one of my closest devotees. So the knowing or not knowing of Swami is not important. We see many people in Puttaparthi in the ashram who lived there for decades, and they still haven't changed. They're the same Rakshasas that they were back at the time of Rama.
Is that a bad word, Rakshas?
Yeah.
We don't know.
Devan.
What does that mean?
Devan, Asura. This is what Swami says. This is Swami's words. And then you look at devotees here and see how close they are, even though they're hundreds, thousands of miles away. All over the world you see them. Whether they know Swami or not, the distance doesn't make a difference. Whether you have Swami in physical proximity, again, makes no difference.
I'm glad to see the Cleveland Clinic has added a higher dimension of humanity.
Yeah.
Me too.
What do you think he's here?
The clinic doesn't know this yet.
They don't.
You don't have to know, it'll still work.
Right.
Yeah, question.
A couple questions, but who is your grandfather, if you don't mind me asking?
Sure,
If you could share something.
sure. His name is Swami Sahajananda. He lives a very simple life in right now in Tampa, Florida. Very relaxed. When you walk into his room, it's like walking into the mandir in Prashanthi Nilayam. The energy, the strength is so strong. But he lives a very unassuming life, even though he's had many, many, many professional accolades in his life as a lawyer and a leading figure in his lifetime. So he's in Tampa. Oh, I think he's been 84 for the past 5 years or something. So the question is about Samadhi and what is it like? Samadhi, Swami says, is the equal-mindedness. So the mind is completely flat. It is like looking at a pool of water, and all of our thoughts are like ripples in the pool that keep you from seeing a reflection clearly. And so in meditation, what we do is we still that ripple, we still all those ripples on the pool so we can see ourselves clearly, which is God. And so in Samadhi, all the preconceptions that we have about ourselves that you mentioned earlier melt away. All the ideas that we have about everything melt away. And all that's left is nothing. Nothing at all. And that nothing, as Swami says, is everything. To experience that requires grace, effort and grace. You won't be able to get it without grace. But it does take persistent effort. But it's easier than you would expect. Swami is giving us self-realization in the palm of our hands. He's put it right here for us. We just have to close our hands around his and take it with us. That is how close it is. When you have that experience, your life will be changed forever. Forever. And Swami is teaching us slowly, gradually, not to rely on his physical form so much, right? I mean, we see it in Puttaparthi all the time. If you were to go 10 years ago, Swami would walk around, give darshan, be close to all of us. Now you go, there's brass railings on the veranda. Swami comes in his car. He doesn't move around the crowd as much.
Glass up.
Exactly, exactly. So it's very difficult to have his physical darshan. We have karshan, but we don't have his darshan anymore.
Can you try answering Jim's question from another perspective, perhaps, about why, with the 6.5 billion people, a handful seem to be aware of Baba?
It's a question of timing. We're all fruits on the trees. We all ripen at different rates. Some of us spoil before we get there because we don't take advantage of the avatar's physical presence or his teaching. Swami says it's like this. He said in India we have these kite strings, and we know what kites are, of course. And so the spools are big. They're about this big, and they have handles that come off the sides. And you wind up the string onto the spool as you're playing the kite, as you bring it back down or as you let it go. Swami says our sadhana, our spiritual practice, is like winding up the string on that spool. He says the reason many Sai devotees fail in their progress towards God is because in a moment of weakness, when they lack discipline, they drop that spool. And all the sadhana, all the work that they've done for so long comes undone. And he says it happens again and again. In a moment of weakness, you drop the spool and you undo what you've just spent so many years, perhaps lifetimes, doing. Now, going back to the question of why are all of us here at this time? Why not before? Why not later? This is a unique time in Earth's history. It's gone through tremendous yugas, ages before this, billions of years. There have been many, many civilizations on this planet before us. There are many, many civilizations here ready to help us. Swami has talked about them in smaller group interviews. It's like they're all watching us. I think we're all the comedy channel for them. But we have their help, and we're all here for this purpose of moving into the golden age. Swami says that Ram Raj, the time of Rama, when people were so dharmic, so righteous in their behavior, that time will come again. When there are never earthquakes, no hurricanes, no typhoons, no hailstorms the size of golf balls coming down, because people practiced dharma so strongly that Earth had no need to take in that negative energy and then bring it back out in the form of storms and natural calamities. Everyone was so righteous that truth reigned, and that time will come again. But it has never happened in this way. It has never happened in a way that everyone has the chance to rise into the golden age. Now, one thing about this point about all of us being present at this time, this is the golden age. It's beginning. Swami says the golden age begins in each person when he or she loses all their negative qualities and embraces God fully. That's true. But in order to get into the golden age, the time has come now where all the tests that we have, and there are always tests, have to be passed with 100% marks. In other words, if you come to a life test and you get 90%, you've got to go through it again and again and again until you've mastered that test. This is the lifetime where all the lessons that you've learned in all the previous lifetimes are going to come into play. Everything that you've done before, all the years you spent as yogis, as kings, as queens, as villains, as saints, all those lessons come into play now. This is the lifetime. This is it. Everything that you've learned has to be put into play now. There's no point in delaying anything. So when you come across different teachers, they're all teaching you the same thing. Move on, continue to grow, progress, and know that you are God. This is it. So don't waste this chance that you have.
I don't know. I'm kind of getting what she's meaning is, if I know Swami is the right one for me, how do I keep from going to somebody else and saying, you need to go to Swami and hear the truth? Is that what you kind of mean? That's what I mean then. I don't care. I'm saying you get so sold on something, you say, this is the way, and you should know about him too. And it may not be appropriate from that person, but that's probably a common temptation.
It's a mental hang-up to be caught on a particular path or a particular way. Some of you hear my words today and you don't quite connect with some of the words that I've chosen. The words themselves aren't important. It's the direction that they point into. They're just signposts that tell you where to go. The things that I say, that I speak, that Swami speaks are just signposts along the way. So don't get caught up in the mental this and that of this particular path or that particular path. At one point, it becomes where there is no path. There is no religion. It's just one, that God. And that's what you should strive for.
When Baba talks to you, for every incident, do you know your purpose? Why you're in Cleveland? Why you're at Cleveland Clinic? Or when something happens to you, do you get a lesson from that incident?
That's a great question. The question was, when something happens to you, do you know right away, or do you know what the incident is? And sometimes yes, sometimes no. This comes back to what we were talking about a little while ago when we were saying, sometimes we ask Swami something and we get an answer, but it doesn't work out right just the way we think that it should have. Yeah. Sometimes it's because we don't have the perception, or we don't have the perspective to understand his message. So for example, if my 5-year-old son asked me, Dad, how does a computer work? Well, I could kind of tell him, but he wouldn't quite really get it in just the way. Now, a higher answer would be, we simply don't have the perspective at that time. So let me give you a quick story, and then we'll end. So a couple of years ago, Swami said to me one day, he says, your sadhana is over. Do you want to come back to me now? Now, years before this, Swami, I used to be in a state where I thought, what this life, what's the purpose? I just want to merge into Swami. I don't want to go on anymore. I just want to merge myself back into Swami and enter back into that divine consciousness. So one day, during a very deep meditation, actually, my life force started to leave my physical body. And as I was exiting, and Swami says, do you want to come back to me now? This was in the mid-90s. And I said, Swami, whatever your will. And I sank back into my body and continued on. Had I said yes, I assumed that I would have passed on and moved on. So years later, Swami said, your sadhana is over. Do you want to come back to me now? And I said, Swami, I had matured a little bit. He says, there's so much suffering on this earth. I said, as long as there's suffering, let me continue to return again and again to help those who suffer. And so Swami said, okay. A week or two went by, and it was Shivaratri time, and Swami came in a subtle form to me during bhajans, during Shivaratri. And we were talking, and he told me how much he loved me, that he was always with me. In his subtle form, I could feel his hand against mine. I could even feel his foot. He was sitting next to me, resting against my foot. The physical sensation, the darshan was so real. That Shivaratri happened to be on a weekday. I had to work the next day. So around midnight, I left and drove home. And as I was driving home, talking to Swami, someone pulled out in front of me and rammed right into my car, totaling my car and destroying everything. And so as I got out of the car, the other man got out and he said sorry. He was shivering like a leaf, and I was standing in front of my car, and I was just thinking, oh, I love you so much, this guy who just totaled my car. And eventually, the police came and brought me home and so forth, and my car was ruined. And I thought, Swami, why did this happen? I was thinking about you at the time. Why did it have to happen like that? And then I thought back to what he had said before. That was my exit point. I didn't have the perspective when it happened to understand that, but that was my way out. Had I said, yes, Swami, it's time for me to come back. So sometimes we get answers from Swami. We don't understand them at that time because we don't have quite the perspective yet. But over time, we'll begin to understand them.
One more quick question. So when I tend to listen to my gut, my inner voice, and later on I find out it was so strong and I followed and the results were not what I expected.
Not what you expected.
Did I make a mistake, or should I still continue to follow?
It depends.
Or don't
Yeah,
I have
that's a
that?
great point. Part of it was expectation. Part of it was expectation, and that again goes back to desire and attachment. So part of it is that it may be time for some things to happen before you can move on to the next step. So with that, why don't we end with time, and I'll be able to take personal questions up front. And I thank you all for your attention. Thank you, Swami, for having us all come together.
Thank you.
And
So what does Swami think about Cleveland?
he says, go Indians.
Not Cavaliers.
How about the Cavaliers?
Go Indian.
Let's end with Om and 3 Shantis. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
And are those 6 disciples of Jesus still at Prashanti Nilayam?
Only Swami knows.
Thank you.
Sairam.
We will take part in the annual sports and games of Sri Sathya Sai. Respecting and abiding by